All right, so next kid's book, Frederick. All along the meadow, where the cows grazed and the horses ran, there was an old stone wall. In that wall, not far from the barn and the granary, a chatty family of field mice had their home. But the farmers had moved away, the barn was abandoned, and the granary stood empty. And since winter was not far off, the little mice began to gather corn and nuts and wheat and straw. They all worked day and night, all except Frederick. "Frederick, why don't you work?" they asked. "Well, I do work," said Frederick. "I gather sun rays for the cold, dark winter days." When they saw Frederick sitting there, staring at the meadow, they said, "And now, Frederick?" "I gather colors," answered Frederick simply, "for winter is gray." And once Frederick seemed half asleep. "Are you dreaming, Frederick?" they asked reproachfully. But Frederick said, "Oh no, I'm gathering words, for the winter days are long and many, and we'll run out of things to say." The winter days came, and when the first snow fell, the 5 little field mice took to their hideout in the stones. So the question is, should Frederick get food? I mean, we may have a supply problem here, right? We have 5 mice who want to eat. Only 4 mice gathered food. Frederick was gathering other supplies, if we even believe that he was doing what he claimed. And so these 4 mice that need to vote, I don't think Frederick gets a vote as to whether he gets to eat or not. These other 4 mice need to decide, does Frederick get food? Care ethics mouse, deontological mouse, utilitarian mouse, virtue ethics mouse. So let's walk through it. The care ethics mouse. I mean, the caring thing to do obviously would be to feed Frederick. But what about everybody else? We should care for them as well, correct? That they should also get food. And so for the care ethicists, we're thinking like Mom would think. And so I wonder if the care ethics mouse would sacrifice their food for everyone else. Isn't that what Mom would do? If there's not enough food for everyone, Mom's probably the one who's going to go without. And then we get in that line between self-care, care for others again, perhaps. Now with the virtue ethics mouse, Mouse Aristotle, we need to consider what the action is going to say about the character of that particular mouse, right? Would a good mouse feed other mice, prevent them from starving? Or would a good mouse kind of, to go back to pocket change, teach lessons? The lesson is, you don't work, you don't eat. Now, unfortunately, that may be a bit excessive in this situation, because in this situation, if you don't eat, you starve to death. Right? This isn't just missing a meal or not having a dessert. This is starving to death. Perhaps the virtuous mouse rations in such a way that everyone is a little bit hungry, but nobody starves to death. Maybe that's what a virtuous mouse does here. Again, with virtue ethics, it's a bit grayer than it is with some of the other theories. Does the virtuous mouse sacrifice their own food so that Frederick can eat? I mean, sure, you starve to death, but at least you get the statue. What a great mouse. What a kind and generous mouse. Or is that being too kind and too generous, such that it becomes vicious instead of virtuous? But it is a family too, right? So probably virtuous to feed family members. The utilitarian mouse. some of the factors that they would need to consider. I mean, all the mice will probably be happier if all of the mice get to eat. No death, that's probably happier. But in order to do that, again, we may need to ration to the point of not quite starving, but maybe kind of close. So then how unhappy will we all be that our bellies are not full? How unhappy would we be if one of our family members died? Gotta weigh that. What about the mental pleasure, physical pleasure distinction? Mill might have to say, if Frederick's doing what he claims to be doing, then it seems he's pursuing the mental pleasures, which are more valuable than the physical pleasures, and thus make Frederick the most valuable of the 5 mice. Easier to replace a mouse that gathers food than it would be to replace a mouse who gathers sun rays and colors and words. But again, that's if he's actually doing what he claims. The other mice ask him reproachfully, which indicates they don't believe him. They think he's just being lazy and trying to get out of work. Like the rest of us are all gathering stuff. What are you doing, Frederick? Oh, I'm working. Now, what's interesting is the author himself says the mice worked day and night, all except Frederick. Is this a fellow artist, an author, and an illustrator, a fellow artist telling us that Frederick's not actually working? Seems unlikely. So perhaps the utilitarian would need to put Frederick to the test to see if he actually did gather these supplies, and if these supplies will then benefit everyone else. Will this lead to a greater amount of happiness for the rest of us, the fact that you've gathered these other supplies other than food? All of these factors need to be considered and weighed against one another. Probably leads to a greater amount of happiness to feed Frederick. And again, maybe the utilitarian mouse is the sacrificial mouse like the care ethics mouse would be. Frederick's valuable enough, his supplies are beneficial enough that I'll sacrifice my portion so that Frederick can eat. We turn to the Kant mouse. Remember the Kant mouse, we have these maxims that need to be universalized. Mice starving to death, probably not something that can be universalized. And remember, for deontology, we're also not thinking about the far-flung future as well. So we're probably taking it day by day. Hey, who gets to eat today? All of us. Who gets to eat today? All of us. Who gets to eat today? All of us. Who starves to death today? Probably all of us. Right? But the intention is for everyone to eat. The intention's not for anyone to starve to death. And so it could be a we all eat or none of us eat type situation, which seems, again, quite black and white, which again seems quite Kantian. Some things to consider. Let's finish the book. This will be kind of a short video today, because I want you to kind of, again, this was just kind of to walk through some of the theories. I want you to keep thinking about them, right, as you're kind of working on your own, or as you're working through the second exam. In the beginning, there was lots to eat, and the mice told stories of foolish foxes and silly cats. They were a happy family. So the rest of them were telling stories, so I guess they were gathering words even while they were gathering food. That's interesting. But little by little, they nibbled up most of the nuts and berries. The straw was gone, and the corn was only a memory. It was cold in the wall, and no one felt like chatting. Then they remembered what Frederick had said about sun rays and colors and words. "What about your supplies, Frederick?" they asked. "Close your eyes," said Frederick as he climbed on a big stone. "Now I send you the rays of the sun. Do you feel how their golden glow?" And as Frederick spoke of the sun, the 4 little mice began to feel warmer. Was it Frederick's voice? Was it magic? "And how about the colors, Frederick?" they asked anxiously. "Close your eyes again," Frederick said. When he told them of the blue periwinkles, the red poppies and the yellow wheat, and the green leaves of the berry bush, they saw the colors as clearly as if they'd been painted in their minds. And the words, Frederick. Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and then, as if from a stage, he said, "Who scatters snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the weather? Who makes it nice? Who grows the four-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? 4 little field mice who live in the sky. 4 little field mice like you and I. One is the spring mouse who turns on the showers. Then comes the summer who paints in the flowers. The fall mouse is next with walnuts and wheat, and winter is last with little cold feet. Aren't we lucky the seasons are 4? Think of a year with 1 less or 1 more." When Frederick had finished, they all applauded. "But Frederick," they said, "you are a poet." Frederick blushed, took a bow, and said shyly, "I know it." And that apparently is the end of the book. I don't know about you, leaves me a bit dissatisfied, because it's not as if more food was accumulated while he's given these speeches. Like, this is great that he's making them happier. Apparently his supplies did have some benefit, but they're still going to starve to death. There's still not enough food. They've run out of food. They've run out of food. And notice Frederick's poem. He's talking about 4 mice. And he says, think of a year with 1 less or 1 more, which is the situation they have. They have 1 more mouse than they could feed. Frederick is saying, look, you guys made a mistake by feeding me. We have 1 more mouse than we could support and sustain here. We don't have 5 seasons in a year. We have 4. We didn't have enough food for 5 mice. We had enough for 4. We blew it. We're now all going to die. It's nice that we're going to have these pictures and mental images of sunshine as we go, but it's a wrap. We're done. So there's Frederick. And now I'll also post on the discussion board then, obviously you can react to Frederick and so forth, but I'll also post another dilemma, and I kind of want you guys to kind of think through it together, again, as preparation and so forth for the exams that you're working on. All right, see you next time.